All right, good afternoon all. Appreciate everybody that made the trip down here. Thank you for the patience in getting through parking today. I know that was a bit of a challenge, so I was also going through that parking challenge for those that parked in the back lot. My name is Jeremy Hendris. I am the Chief Deputy Director for the Department of Talent and Economic Development. And I can tell from the crowd I know a fair amount of you, but I'll be around afterwards too if you have some additional questions. But first, I kind of want to thank you for coming. Purpose of this, if you weren't sure but still showed up, for those that thought they knew and are here, I just want to clarify for everybody, is really to go talk a little bit about convening a talent consortium and what steps are involved, and try and share some tips and tricks about what might make that more successful. So that's our goal today, is kind of walk through some of that. We have some partners. One of the things that, if you've seen me do a Marshall Plan presentation, I usually throw this out there. A lot of the ideas that we came up with the Marshall Plan, we borrowed, is what I told was the PC word, as opposed to stole, but from other folks. And the idea of a talent consortium is also one of those. So what we did is invited our folks from the Talent Pipeline Management program to come in and give some background and information about what they do, because that's exactly where we stole the concept of the talent consortiums from. So just to give you a heads up, want to make sure everybody kind of gets an idea of what the agenda looks like for today. So we're going to do a welcome. We're obviously running behind because of parking. So I'm going to try and keep my comments short as far as the application steps, the online resources, and the timing. We'll take some brief Q&A if there's any on the material that I covered there. We'll turn it over to our friends from Talent Pipeline Management. They've got a couple presentations to go through, and then how it relates to the Marshall Plan grants. And then we'll end with some additional Q&A, close, still look to get everybody out of here on time at 3 o'clock. I'll hang around for a little while afterwards if you have additional questions that we can't get to during the conversation. For those of you that might be viewing this online, you're always welcome. There's contact information on the website where you can send questions. We'll make sure that those get answered promptly. So a couple things. How many, if you've been to a Marshall Plan presentation, you've seen this talent wheel before. How many folks have been to a workshop already? Phenomenal. For those of you that haven't, my apologies, because I'm going to probably skip some stuff, but you can find the presentations that are online and kind of scroll through them, because we are going to be focused on the talent consortium piece. As you're taking a look at this one, this is available online as well. And this is the diagram that we've always shown about what is a talent consortium and how different aspects and players can come together. Business, education, obviously are the obvious ones, but trade schools and unions, Michigan Works, local economic development groups, how they can play a role, particularly in convening. So I'm hoping that there's a fair number of folks from that world here. Nonprofits, their ability to support this process. So it really, if you have any vested interest whatsoever in educating, training, or employing somebody, you've got a role to play here. Or just making sure that the future of Michigan residents are well off. There's an opportunity. Quick question just for the crowd, just so we can get an idea of who's all we have here today. For those that are here, how many of you are employers? A handful. How many do we have from the K-12 arena? Post-secondary. Local economic development groups, chambers, Michigan Works. This is a really good mix today. Any other group that I didn't cover, nonprofits, etc. Associations, wonderful. So we have a really good mix here today, which is great. So I'll go over a couple things on the grant process, particularly for those in the K-12 arena. And I know we've stressed this at our workshops. This is not a traditional grant process. This is not, we were looking to do this much different than what you've come to expect out of a Department of Ed grant. What we're looking to do is start with a concept paper. This is really meant to be a one-pager light overview. We'll take those. We do have to score them because we're a state government and we're an amazing bureaucracy and we love to score things. So we will score those, but more importantly, we'll provide you feedback. And when I say provide feedback, it's not just going to send you your score and say you got out of 75 points, 50. It's going to be feedback about where we think there are some strengths and some weaknesses that could be improved, some other ideas. If we know somebody else that's doing the same thing, we'll share that with you. Because we want folks to collaborate on this process. It's really meant to be a high-level overview so folks don't get too far down the road without actually having the right components or trying to apply for a grant that isn't eligible. The next step is going to be the talent agreement. This one is 90% of the work that is going to need to be done on this. The talent agreement is when you've identified those business partners, those educators that are going to participate, all the other groups that we talked about. Who's going to be responsible for what? You've identified your talent needs, and we're going to go through a process about how to do that a little bit. But let's say you've identified your talent needs, you know what your hard and soft skills are, and you've built your talent pipeline to see where those gaps are that you need to fill. Who's going to be responsible for what roles in the education and training, professional development, et cetera. Map it all out. And at the talent agreement, we also want to see where the money's going to flow. So who's picking up the tab for what? What does the state need to cover? What are you asking for us from the grant process? What are the businesses going to be picking up? What are the K-12 institutions already providing or going to provide? And really map all that out. It should be about 98% of your grant application will be done really with the talent agreement. This is another great opportunity for us to review that. We'll score it again, and we'll provide you feedback. Much like before, it's intended to be constructive feedback. We want folks to succeed in this process. So the feedback that you're going to get, we'll actually go through and say, you know, take a look at this program, or we think you're missing some stuff on this part, or we need to see more in this area, or this is just awesome. That hopefully will set you all up very nicely for the grant application. Like I said, our goal is to have you succeed. That talent agreement being 90% of that grant application and having that feedback process gives you an opportunity to really shine up that product and get it into the grant application window. So I'm going to run through these very quickly because we're short on time today because we started a little late, and you're going to hear more about building a talent consortium, but just some real high level overview that I want to kind of explain from our perspective when we were taking a look at this, and you're going to see a lot of alignment. We need folks to identify their talent needs. Find those employers with what those talent needs are. Start engaging. You're going to hear a couple different ways that you can do this. I always think engaging educators relatively early is important, so they know how the process goes. But it's going to be really important to make sure that you've got that talent need identified. And that needs to be the focus of the concept paper, the talent agreement, and the grant application. That's what we're looking for, is what is the talent need and how are you going to fill it? So that really needs to be the heart and soul, and that actually is a lot of work, and you're going to hear about that later and how much work that really is. So as you get that group, start pulling them together of who has those like talent needs. Your local economic development groups, Michigan Works, and other groups along those lines, I think are great resources because they're constantly talking with businesses out there about what talent needs are. So if you need, let's say I'm a small manufacturer like in Traverse City, and I only need 2 CNC machine operators. I'm not going to be able to develop a program. I'm not going to be able to engage a K-12, a post-secondary program to develop a program to train 2 CNC machine operators. But if I talk to my local chamber, I talk to my local economic development organization, I talk to my local Michigan Works, they can probably point me in the areas of who else is looking for that talent. And we can collectively come together and figure out what those talent needs are and start that conversation. Again, once I've identified those that are going to be part of the talent consortium, start really hammering home what those hard and soft skills are. This is tough. I know you're going to hear it emphasized later, but I want to emphasize it again. It takes a lot of work to bring a group of businesses together and all agree on the exact same basic skill sets that they want to have folks do. It can be done. It does take time, but it will pay off. Make sure that you're working with those educators to identify those barriers to getting these folks educated and trained with those skill sets, and start getting creative programs together. And then last couple of steps, start building the plan. Once you've identified those barriers and what some of those solutions are, start putting the math behind it. Who's going to do what, roles and responsibilities. And then lastly, of course, is apply for the grant. Like I said, I went really quick, high-level overview, but you're going to get more experience from those that are actually doing it to talk about those a lot of those type of steps. Timeline. So most popular question right now, as I'm sure most people are aware. This is slightly adjusted if you were at any of our workshops last week. Popular question, I want to hit this right on the head right now. I don't know how many folks follow the State Board of Education. I'm guessing everybody in the K-12 and higher ed arena do, probably not as much in the business world. For those that were following along, we had Marshall Plan grant criteria up at the State Board of Education last week that did not get adopted. So what does that mean? That's what everybody's asking right now. We're still working this process right now is what it means. The program is put in statute, and we're working with our friends. So the program exists. The dollars have been allocated for it. We're working with our friends at the State Board of Ed and others to figure out how we can relay some of those concerns in the best process forward. But we're encouraging everybody, if you want to get in this first phase of funding, keep working on this. This will go forward. The timing on the concept paper is probably going to change a little bit. We might push the dates back. We're still committed to trying to get some of the first grants out the door by the end of the year. And we still plan on making that timeline. We may have to adjust these dates just a touch to make sure that actually happens. But first round, probably now more like early September for the due date on the concept papers. Sometime in September, we'll have the talent agreements coming through, and then the grant application window in October. We'll get hard dates out as soon as we possibly can. We're having those conversations right now about what those will actually look like, but we're encouraging everybody to keep working on this. If you've also been to a Marshall Plan workshop, you have heard us repeatedly say, don't worry about the first window. And I will tell you right now, unless you are really well down the way in this process, and when you hear from our folks at TPM, you'll understand why, you're probably not going to make the first window anyway. If you want to get us concept papers, it's great. I only anticipate that we're going to offer probably maybe 10%, 15%. Don't take me to the bank on that, but that's my gut feeling as to how much of the dollars are going to get awarded in the first round. We know we have groups out there that have already been working on this for quite a while as far as bringing essentially a talent consortium together, identifying those needs and matching up with the timeline. I expect our second and third tranches in the spring of next year to be much bigger. And we're happy to work with folks in between to make sure that you're well prepared, because it will be, this is a rolling grant. There'll be multiple windows. We have to get half of the dollars out the door by June, and we want them to be high quality applications. So they're going to be heavily critiqued, but that's also why we have those 2 feedback periods as part of the application process. I don't expect you all to read this right now, but I want to make sure that folks are aware. Marshall Plan grants, the dollars. If you're identifying a talent need and you want a Marshall Plan grant, this one's really important. It's got to be tied to one of the top careers that we have on our website that's identified. Again, you can find this on the website. I'll go over some online resources in a minute, but it has to be in line with one of those. We are developing a process at TAD where we can add or subtract careers. I don't anticipate subtracting any anytime soon. I don't think that we'll fill these needs that quickly. But we will be adding a process to figure out how we can bring additional professions and careers that are not on this chart, but still face a shortage. Stay tuned on how we're going to do that. They won't be available for the first round, but maybe in second and third rounds. So common things that have already come up in conversation that people have hit me up on are certain, for example, small irony in all of this, teachers. In certain classifications of teachers, we have some shortages right now. They're not on this list. But we know we have a shortage. We know we're not turning out enough. So we're just going to develop the process on how we can add things to that list. So stay tuned. That will be forthcoming. But for now, if you're going to go for the first round, or even if you're working on the second round for a grant, these are the careers that are eligible right now. I'd also like to point out on computer science and IT, they're very broad. So we have web developer and computer analyst. Those are really broad classifications. A lot of these are. If you have questions about whether or not something's going to fit into one of those categories, reach out to us. We're happy to answer those questions. Just a quick reminder, what can we fund with this stuff? New curriculum development, equipment, expansion of existing programs, things like Cisco's Networking Academy, which I know we use all the time, can be expanded with this. Career exploration's part of it. Professional development for the teachers is part of this. Our support for at-risk students is actually our Tuition for Tomorrow program, but we're hoping some folks can tie into that, even though you won't specifically be asking for the grant dollars as part of this process. So there's a lot of different things. We try to make it as wide as possible. The one thing that it won't fund, that I know for sure we won't fund, is bricks and mortar. So we're not building new buildings with it. And the short story is, if for any of you that have built a new building, a $100 million pot of money does not go very far when you start building buildings. So we had to limit that one off the list. Employers, we've got a few things that we're asking for changes from you as well. So I just want to put this as a reminder. This is not necessarily required to be in the talent agreement, but I'd encourage folks to take a look at that when you're doing the talent agreement. What we will be scoring on, and I would anticipate scoring on, is how are those employers going to engage with that talent pipeline to make sure that if we're going to invest in building an education and training to get more, whatever it is, cybersecurity students educated for jobs, that the employers as part of that consortium will entertain in some fashion, interview them, hiring bonuses, things along those lines. There will be points for that. So pay attention to that. Those are the type of things that we're going to be looking for. So that definitely will be weighted. You know, as always, we encourage folks to take a look at their hiring practices. I know when unemployment was 14%, a lot of places we had one position would open, we'd get 200 applicants, most of them may or may not be qualified. People started putting artificial barriers in place to help winnow down that pool. We really encourage all of the businesses to take another look at their hiring practices and see, do you have artificial barriers still in place now? We're all desperate for talent. Are we requiring bachelor's degrees for things that necessarily don't need it? Are we requiring other education and training that's not necessary, but we may have put in place back when we had too much talent available? Online resources, just real quick, we've got a framework for the Talent Consortium and a nice guide on how to develop your Talent Consortium on the website. It's about a third of the way down. There's right in the center of the web page, there's a heading called Grant Resources. Those are the name of the two documents. The framework is that beautiful rainbow Skittles chart that I put up earlier. The Learn How to Develop Your Talent Consortium, I'd heavily encourage you to download it and read it. It's going to line nicely with a lot of the things that if you're not going to get involved with TPM, if you want to do it on your own, it's a really good walkthrough on how to kind of start a talent consortium and work through that, identifying the talent needs you have and how to start building the solutions to those problem sets that you set out. So please take a look at that document. It's a great resource. Another one that I want to make sure that everybody's aware of is the Marshall Plan for Talent workshop presentations. And the reason I put that up there, even though most of you have been there, is that's where you can find the jobs and career slide. I made a note this morning to myself and surprise to my comms team, sorry, that we'll try and pull this out on its own slide on the web. So let's see, Dan's peeking out, making notes. So we'll try and make that a little bit more accessible, but for now, that's where you can find it. So with that, there's our website. I'll leave it up for just a quick second. I'll see if there's one or two quick questions, and then I got to turn it over to Sharon so we can stay on time today. But there's our website where you can find all the information. Any burning questions? We'll still have questions, Q&A at the end too. Yeah.
I'm just going to stop you right there.
Oh yeah, I forgot we have the mic.
Shannon.
Sorry, Michelle.
If you wanted to be in phase one and you put your concept paper in and you're asked for feedback or you want revisions or revisions need to be done, does that push you to phase two, or are you still considered phase one and you work through that?
Thank you for reminding me one key bullet point I forgot today. So there is a minimum score you have to hit on that concept paper to advance to the second round. Otherwise, you're pretty much kicked into the spring round. So if you want to move into the next step of the application process, there will be a minimum score to hit that we're going to be looking for folks to achieve in order to move forward on it. I think that's going to be a bigger issue, to be honest, on the talent agreement more than it will be on the concept paper. But again, I don't think we're going to have a lot of folks that are going to make it through the first round. And that's part of the reason why is that, because we want these to be successful. So we don't want you to just jump in, put a grant application in and have a whole bunch of people get denied and go, well, what happened? So we have another question. So in the back.
Thank you. My question is there a financial match required for the grants?
For components of it. So we try to make this easy. One grant application for all of those buckets. The equipment grants, there definitely is for accessing dollars. It's 25% match. It can count some form of in-kind contribution, so it doesn't have to be hard dollars, but there is a match to that component. I think off the top of my head, that's it. I'm sure the team will yell at me before I come back up on stage again if I miss something, but I believe that's the one that requires a match per se. I'm going to turn it over to Sharon real quick. I know a few other folks have questions. Do your best to remember them. We'll do some Q&A at the end if we still have time, and I'll still hang around otherwise. So Sharon, what's the actual, I should have gotten this before, talent pipeline management guru. What's your, what do you want to, queen?
It's actually, I'm a Michigan Talent Architect at Consumers Energy.
Architect, that's even way more professional.
Well, it's unclear exactly what I.
All right, we get that working? I can do
this part, you do that part. Okay, it's on. Good job. Hey. All right, let's try that again. Hi, I'm Sharon Miller, and I'm with Consumers Energy, and my job is I'm the Michigan Talent Architect there, and I'm a little concerned that Jeremy may have oversold my wisdom. What I am is I'm a retired community college educator. For those of you who don't know me from my past life, I was in workforce development, and Consumers Energy brought me in a few years ago to help them with their own talent pipeline issues. And in doing that, we discovered a system called Talent Pipeline Management, TPM is the acronym for it, that was created through the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and it relies on supply chain management principles. It is in the public domain, so you can go out and get more and more and more information about it. Today, what we want to do is fire hose on this process, because what we know is that the expectation for you to, as educators, to do the work of education and also convene a group of employers and get them to tell you what they want is not easy. And what part of I think we're suggesting is get help and let someone else do the employer side or work in partnership with you. And we're going to give you some examples today of who those partners could be. If you want to take this on yourself to do this type of a process, some of you have already done it. Please don't let me sound condescending. If you want to take this on yourself and learn how to do TPM, Joe's going to talk about the schedule we have coming up of some workshops, and then the full academy we'll have planned later in the year so that folks can do this long term. But I want to be clear, TPM is a long-term process to address employer needs. It is about engagement with the education system for the purpose of addressing employer needs. And so this isn't about, how to do the Marshall Plan. This is about how to work with employers and get them engaged with the talent system, the talent development system. So with that, what I'm going to do is give you a little more background about Consumers Energy and why we're doing this. One, we ran into our own problems back in the since I started working 30 years ago, they talked about the skilled trades crisis was coming. Oh my God, the skilled trades crisis was coming. And for 30 years, it didn't come. And it's here. All of a sudden it's here because all those folks are retiring, and there was this awful recession where we didn't hire anybody or train anybody for a window of about 10 years. And now we have a real crisis. And so consumers hit that wall a few years ago and started to get ahead of it. We also, though, as a utility, we're economic developers at heart. I always like to say the original economic developers were the railroads and the utilities. And so it's still in our blood, and it's still what we do very much. It establishes Michigan as a premier destination for business. We really want our education to be something we hold up as a reason to locate in Michigan. And we believe that employer engagement will help in that way. And consumers believes that doing it is the right thing to do for our community. What helps kids grow and employees grow and companies grow helps Michigan grow, and that helps Consumers Energy. There was a vision statement that was cast by the man who brought me in. He said, I want you to make Michigan the first state in the country to have a trained network of TPM people to work with business and industry so that they can engage more effectively with the talent supply chain. And look at TPM and other best practices. So recognizing TPM is just one way to do it. Sometimes these things are called sector strategies. The person who's going to come up and talk about real examples works in sector strategies, and TPM she brought to the table to help with that. And so, keep in mind that it's not the be all and end all, but it is a methodology. And the vision was that we create more and more access points to people who know how to facilitate this process for businesses. Because right now, businesses are struggling and schools are struggling to connect. And I've heard that for 30 years, and I was on the school side for a long time. And it's frustrating as an educator because you want to do better and you think you're doing the right thing, and they're still saying we don't get what we want. And that's really frustrating. And so it's time now for the employers to do their homework and to get engaged in a way that they haven't typically done. And that's what TPM will help us do. We trained our first 20 people 2 weeks ago. They completed a 9-month-long process of learning how to do this talent pipeline management through the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. These are the entities that a person from these entities started in the academy. Some of them subsequently graduated from the academy and have gone on to other roles still in the TPM families. Deb, for instance, started with Michigan Works West and is now with the Talent Investment Agency. So those kinds of things, we have some of those folks out there, but these were their original sponsors in the academy. So these organizations, most of them are not education. You'll only see one educator up there. We put one community college in to test whether this is something they wanted to do. So the U.S. Chamber of Commerce mindset is education shouldn't have to do this part. It should be organized by business or their organizers or conveners, thus the name of this meeting today. And that those conveners begin the process of the hard part, the homework part, and then bring the educators to the table to then say, let's work together at this point. But getting the employers in the room and getting them on the same page and getting the information from them is very difficult for education to do. And so that's what the U.S. Chamber advocates for. Let business organize themselves. The Marshall Plan doesn't put that restriction on. It can be led by whoever you want to have serve as your convener. You can have a convener and then have someone else who's in charge of the businesses, or the convener can be the person who manages the businesses, however works for you. This slide helped me tremendously when I finally started to understand TPM. And I like it because, one, look at the middle set of chevrons. They're the hardest to read, or kind of hard to read, where it talks about the full spectrum of employment from soup to nuts. It talks about career awareness, career exploration, career preparation, pre-employment training, onboarding, full productivity, and retention. That is the full spectrum of career readiness, if you will. Then above it, it says tier 1 supplier, tier 2 supplier, tier 3 supplier. That's where you start thinking like supply chain, okay? That tier 1 suppliers are typically your elementary school, your middle school level. Tier 2 suppliers tend to be middle school, maybe high school. Tier 3, flip that, tier 3 is elementary. Tier 1 tends to be either your high school, your community college, or your university, or trade school, or some other training entity that is the last person to touch that student before they come to work for you. So that what TPM is about is helping employers dig into this. And what I like best about this slide is the employer role is the green triangle on the top right. And this educator one is on the top left. So clearly, education has the strongest role in the career awareness and exploration and preparation. But the green triangle reaches all the way back to career awareness. It says in supply chain management principles, you, the employer, have a role all the way back at the career awareness level. And I think that that's a message we need to continue to take to employers. You can't sit back and treat this like pizza delivery and say, we need 60 more welders. Where are they? Send them out. You've got to be engaged in the supply chain process. They would never dream of treating auto seat covers that way. They get in there and get out on that quality. They talk about the shape and the size and the texture and all of that. They care about that for that commodity, but for their most valuable commodity, their talent, they're not engaging in the same way. So that's what TPM embraces, is the notion that employers really do have to engage in this process. And can you see how that connects to the Marshall Plan? I'm hoping I'll get a few nods. Yes? Okay, good. All right. So Consumers Energy, our success story with this is in 2014, we needed to hire 100 skilled tradespeople. We posted the jobs. We had no problem with applicants. We had 4,000 applicants for those jobs. After we finished screening, we had less than 50 who qualified for the 100 positions that we posted for. That's when we went looking for, there's got to be a better way. And we were a part of, and always have been a part of, the Michigan Energy Workforce Development Consortium. It's a group of employers who had been together for, at that time, 7 years, trying to dabble in this work. wandering in the desert is what I like to call it, because they did a lot of stuff, but they didn't really accomplish anything. They didn't solve any problems for the employers who were there. When TPM came along, all of a sudden, the solution came. And we started getting programs in place that met the needs of the employers. Consumers at that point became champions of TPM in Michigan. And we said, we'd like to bring TPM here. And so we partnered, our foundation partnered with the US Chamber and the Kellogg Foundation, and we brought it here and we trained 20 people, and we hope that it proliferates from there. Our success story today, so going back to the original diagram, we've now hired more than 150 people from 2 schools and programs that we've developed through this. For our electric line worker, we now have a supply chain developed that's K-12, then into Lansing and Alpena Community College. And I say K-12 here, but let me be specific. We created the 17th career cluster in CTE for the energy sector. Got it approved at the state level and have it implemented now in 3 districts in Michigan, with 2 more coming online. We also got an energy industry fundamentals certification course embedded in those programs and in community college programs, and are putting it into high school science curriculum now. Then Lansing and Alpena Community College helped with bringing their electrician programs or line worker programs. We worked on those and made those exactly what we were looking for, and that's where we do our hiring from now. You want to work at Consumers Energy as an electric line worker, that's where you go to school. If you don't go to school there, you can't get hired by us. That's how good this is for us. It's our we no longer advertise for those positions, the entry-level positions, because that pipeline now works for us. So, and from there they come into Consumers Energy and they go into our apprenticeship program. The gas line worker, we discovered through TPM that 45% of the people we had hired were were veterans. And so we started a relationship with Fort Custer and with our private trade school, and they are doing a boot camp with veterans for us. And that's where we've picked up another 60 people. So it really, the TPM process, sometimes it doesn't point back at the public education system. Sometimes through TPM, we learn that there's other sources of talent that are more appropriate. But the early stages, that K-12 stage, will always be there. It's always that first tier 3 provider. So TPM was developed by the US Chamber of Commerce, was funded in Michigan, as I said before, by Consumers and the Kellogg Foundation. It applies those supply chain management principles to talent. And then there's a standard process to address talent challenges for any industry. So this is not just about skilled trades positions. The process can be applied to engineering, IT, healthcare, ag, farming, food processing. It goes on the list, and there are examples all across the country. There are now multiple states that are involved. Michigan is the first to have launched and completed a full academy. Kentucky is right on our heels. Vermont, Tennessee, North Carolina are also using this system, and they're doing it at a statewide level because they are not the hyper-local control state that we are. And so what we liked about it at Consumers Energy is that this is something a community can adopt no matter who they put in the driver's seat, no matter what configuration they are. It's a tool, kind of like if you think of the PMP credential, project management professional, doesn't matter where you go to work, PMP is a PMP is a PMP. Same thing with the TPM process. It's a process that can be used in any situation with a group of employers who have a common pain point that is related to talent. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up one of the things we did. We tried to be smart. We trained 4 people to become trainers in this methodology so that we don't have to keep bringing the US Chamber of Commerce back to Michigan. We can now deliver this training ourselves. We were very, very fortunate to have Michigan Works Association support this effort, and several of the Michigan Works agencies sponsor people to go through the training. Joe Quick works with them and is their lead trainer for business services, if I'm not mistaken. And he's going to take you through the 6 steps of TPM and give you just a quick overview of it. And then we'll come back up and finish with some real life examples besides the consumer story, okay? So Joe, you want to take over?
Yes, absolutely. Right. Good afternoon, everybody. And I love that Sharon said quick overview, because we were joking ahead of time about how wordy I can be. So Good afternoon. My name is Joe Quick. I serve as Director of Business Solutions for the Michigan Works Association. And so what I'm going to do is give you sort of a quick overview of all 6 of the strategies that we employ when we're using the TPM methodology. And I will say that we, in our work with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, we recognized and had some conversation with them about what is really a strategy 0, which is getting a lot of your partners on board, getting them to understand what the talent pipeline management process is, what it isn't, how it fits in with existing efforts. And that's part of what we're doing here today with regard to how it connects to the Marshall Plan. So the first strategy is organizing employer collaboratives. So obviously very key to and akin to what we're all talking about here today. And while I love to think that I'm great at explaining this, I'm actually going to play a video about this first strategy that I think really sets the tone for talent pipeline management overall. My test of technology here. Here we go. Oh, wrong one. So no kidding.
Those two. Yeah, we should pull it up though.
Is anyone written a song about the Marshall Plan that they'd like to share with us?
Which video you got? All right, that's the one.
It's that one. Yep. Perfect. Thank you. I'm past the point where I'm relatively young and everyone thinks I can deal with technology. So I think
We're halfway there.
thank goodness for Dan.
The U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation's signature workforce development program, called Talent Pipeline Management, puts employers in the driver's seat of education partnerships to close the skills gap. Now, it's true that businesses have been partnering with education institutions for a long time, but these traditional partnerships simply haven't done enough to put people to work. Currently, there are more than 5.6 million open jobs across the country. What we need is a new way to connect people with the right skills for the right jobs, and a strategy that connects the employer directly to potential employees. Wouldn't it make sense for companies in similar industries, who are all suffering from a shortage of qualified candidates, to get together and share information on what types of employees they need, the skills those employees should have, and find them together? The first strategy of talent pipeline management, forming an employer collaborative, does just that. So what is an employer collaborative? An employer collaborative is a group of businesses coming together to solve a common workforce problem. Collaboratives prioritize relationships with the education and workforce development organizations that best prepare students for in-demand jobs. What makes employer collaboratives different? For one, they are organized by business and are staffed by an organization of their choice, whose sole focus is to meet the talent needs of the collaborative's members. Being a member of a collaborative enables employers to be more strategic about better communicating what they need when they need it. Ultimately, being more strategic saves employers money and time recruiting, hiring, and training their employees. In a collaborative, employers can speak about their needs and challenges and can work together to identify those education providers that can best address their priorities. Maybe the challenge lies in a specific business function, like different companies in different industries that can't find enough qualified IT talent. Maybe it's a specific job, like registered nurses in a community where the healthcare industry is the driver of the economy. Or maybe it's unique to an industry, like a lack of qualified welders. If there's a common pain point, an employer collaborative can help. It's valuable for companies to come together in this way because as a group, they can predict and plan how many employees they will need and what skills they will require in the future. Decide what qualifies a candidate to be prepared for a certain job. Find out where the best prepared candidates are coming from and incentivize educators to better prepare students for the jobs that exist today. In this model, the employer collaborative acts as the end customer of an education partnership, not just another stakeholder at the table. This ensures education and workforce development organizations have a clear understanding of the skills the local business community is looking for in its workforce. In short, business finds the right workers with the right skills, and education providers can show value to their students by preparing them for in-demand jobs. It's a win-win. Ready to learn how to put an employer collaborative together? Let's get started.
All right, so that was a really good overview of what employer collaboratives do and a quick overview of the process. But really, so once these employer collaboratives are established and they identify what some of those critical pain points or critical job functions that they need to concentrate on, as the video mentioned, that can either coalesce around a specific job function or industry like IT that crosses several different industries, or focus on a very specific industry. Those collaboratives then move into the second stage of engaging in demand planning. So what's behind demand planning is sort of starting with some initial labor market information to start the conversation, identifying those critical pain point positions, identifying what the demand will be over the next few years, over the next few months for those positions, and then really diving into the quantity of jobs that will need to be filled, the location of where those jobs are available, timing of when they're needed, and the quality or the requirements for filling those jobs. And that's where it lines up again with supply chain. Strategy 3, along with the previous strategy, is really important to informing education and trainers of the needs of business. So this strategy focuses on communicating the competencies and credentials that are required for those positions, both at entry level on up through the ladder within the company, and really understanding not only what businesses may have always put on their job descriptions, but what is really needed, what is critical for those positions, and then identifying some common language in the way that employer collaborative is talking about those skills that are needed, whether they be soft skills, whether they be more specific industry specific skills. And while they may have some differences in what's required for their positions, adopting some common language and some clear signals about the way they talk about those is really important when then bringing those to the education community. So as Sharon mentioned, it's about employers doing their homework first, using each other to understand what some of those challenges are, and then overcoming them as a collaborative to really understand what they need and have some data behind it. Then moving into strategy 4, which is about analyzing talent flows. The video talked a little bit, and Sharon mentioned on her charts about those different tiers of providers. So the providers in this case being educators and trainers, where are successful candidates coming from? And then back mapping where they came from before that. So a tier 1 supplier could be another business. It could be a community college or a high school. And then back mapping further all the way back into the K through 12 system, where are we seeing that people are hitting the mark when it comes to specific skills? So businesses can have very specific metrics that they're looking at. How, shortening the time for onboarding for people that come through the door because they're adequately prepared, lowering turnover costs, things like that. Then it moves into building talent supply chains. So there are 3 things that are really key to this. The first being identifying preferred providers. So once they've done strategies 2, 3, and 4, where they know what the demand is, they know what the competencies and credentials are that relate to those, and where they're getting successful talent, they speak very publicly as a collaborative or as an employer individually about where they're getting that successful talent. So Sharon gave a very good example of where Consumers is pulling their talent from. They identified the programs as preferred providers and really promoted them as a way to get into their company. And then this step also focuses on those measures, focuses on ROI, so businesses really understand what their ROI is in working with the education system and working through this process. And then we can also put that forward to the education community as well. If you're getting better, clearer signals from the employer community, it's easier to respond to that on behalf of many employers at once, instead of getting employers coming through your door one by one talking about what they need from the education community. And then it also focuses on incentives, as the video mentioned, for the education and training community. So whether that be businesses investing money, equipment, time, work-based learning opportunities, which is of course key to this Marshall Plan process as well. And then moving into strategy 6, which I'll cover very quickly, and that really is about continuous improvement. It's about making sure that as you move through this process with employers, it's meeting their needs, that the signals that are coming out of the employer collaborative to the education and training community are very clear, and that we're making progress. So Sharon covered a couple of these, and I just want to drive home again that the way that this is different from, I think, a lot of the efforts that we've had with the workforce system, with education and with training organizations and their interface with business, is that this isn't just driven by employer needs, it's actually led by the employers themselves. So we talk a lot about demand driven and about employer focused work in our system. But I think this takes it an extra step in really giving employers both a leadership role and a responsibility in the way that we're shaping our education system, and in a supportive way, instead of education and business kind of complaining about some breakdown in that process. This really gives them the structure to communicate. And again, it uses business principles of supply chain management. So the language is familiar to business. And there's a step-by-step process, which I mentioned. So then the continuous improvement metrics and methods, I just want to drive home that from the business perspective, this helps them to measure cost per hire, to measure the speed of full productivity of new hires, the size of their qualified talent pool, and other metrics, so that when they come to the education community to talk about a program that might not be working, they've actually got data to really understand that and really understand what some of the key skills are that might be missing, whether they're hard skills or soft skills. So quickly, and this information will be distributed as well. We've got a series of workshops that we've put together, both 2-hour workshops that are really geared toward a leadership audience and those stakeholders that might want to learn more about this program, may want to send individuals in the future to the full talent pipeline management process. But we've distilled 6 days down into 2 hours to kind of hit some of the key highlights for those sessions. And then we're also doing some full day sessions, which are really geared toward practitioners in the field that might not need the full 6 days, but might want the opportunity to really understand what this process looks like and how they can support those that are staffing collaboratives. All right. Sharon, yes. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Joe. He was quick today. Joe was quick for a change. Yeah, we appreciate that. Good job, Joe. No, they like my joke. So TPM is about the full spectrum of talent development. It is a longer-term solution for employers. There's no doubt it's talking about fire prevention when a lot of the time the house is on fire for the employer. And so getting them to slow down and recognize the importance of working with the K-12 system is not necessarily the easiest conversation to have. However, places like Consumers Energy and the biggest companies that I've come across, when we start using terms like talent supply chain and supply chain management principles and return on investment and speed to full competence, those are terms that they use in business every day. And when I have talked with businesses about this, and I've been doing a lot of it, they look at me, their head tilts, and you see it click. right away. And I've spent a lot of years trying to get businesses to engage and have not been able to as successfully, and I've got a different reaction from this conversation. So I don't want to oversell it as the silver bullet to everything, because the hard work still remains of developing your training program, of getting those competencies in the classroom, delivering the instruction, getting students and butts in the seats. That's still a hard part of the work to be done. But the employer responsibility to engage is pretty significant. And so I'm going to end my portion, and then I'm going to turn it over to Deb by showing you this slide. Again, you see the chevrons, but what this is what Consumers Energy has done over the last 4 years to get involved in every stage of talent development across the spectrum. Now, some of this is the work of our consortium, and some of it is unique to Consumers Energy. But Safety Hero starts in 2nd grade. We send teachers into 2nd grade classrooms to deliver instruction on downed power lines and the smell of gas. And we start talking about energy careers when we do that and getting our brand in front of them. We do sustainability. You know, your kids come home with the shower head and the LED light bulbs. That's us doing that too. And we do that in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. We now also have Cub Scout and Girl Scout and Boy Scout patches for energy that we sponsor. We are My Bright Future sponsors, First Tech Robotics Challenge, First Robotics, Energy Industry Fundamentals in the high schools, CTE in the high schools, CTE centers in the ISDs. We have the partnerships with the community colleges. We are sponsors and very active with Career Quest, which you'll hear more about when Deb talks. We are a platinum sponsor for My Bright Future. We are all over this because we know it's a talent war. It is, we are not necessarily geographically in a high population center located in Jackson. You know, we have headquarters all over the state and need people all over the state in rural communities, in addition to some of the metropolitan areas. So we know this is what we have to do in order to be engaged. We're willing to do it now, and I think that as you start talking to employers in a different way, you will find a new willingness for employers to participate. And with that, I'm going to turn things over because this woman, Deb Lysinga, I don't want to make it sound like no one has ever done this work before. Some of you are doing it now. Didn't know that it was called Talent Pipeline Management, or don't have to call it that. If you know Bill Rail and Jackson Area Manufacturers Association, they could have written this. There's some good work going on all over in pockets. And Deb Lysinga worked for the Michigan Works Association over on the west side of the state, and they put 5 people from the west side of the state into the TPM Academy, and they work as a collaborative. Not all of them are Michigan Works. There's an economic developer, they've got Talent 2025, they've got the community college, and what was it? And 2 economic developers who went through the TPM Academy, and they've all worked together to do the work that you're going to see Deb talk about. Now, Deb is one of the people, though, who after, well, I don't want to say TPM caused it, but she did go to work for the state of Michigan TIA in sector strategies. And so she's going to have 2 hats on as she speaks to you today. But the reason we brought her in was because of her TPM hat. So come on up, Deb.
So right off the bat, I make no promises about technology, and I asked Joe right away.
Because it worked really well for me earlier.
Yeah, so I just pull him right up here. So while Joe's getting that ready, as Sharon said, my current title, and I wrote it down because I'm 1 week into the job, 1 week and a couple of days into the job. So a big group like you, I'm thinking, oh, I can mess this up really bad. So I wrote it down. And it's a mouthful. It's Administrative Manager for Sector Strategies for the Talent Investment Agency, State of Michigan. So that's why you understand why I wrote it down. But prior to that, I was the Director of Business Solutions at West Michigan Works. And I worked there for 6 years, pulling employers together, working to figure out what employers' needs were, and working with the talent side of West Michigan Works to supply that talent. So for 6 years, we've been doing this work, and it was a real privilege to be asked to go through the TPM Academy because it made sense. And so here's the first slide here. And this is the group that had the privilege to go through TPM Academy, Talent 2025, Lakeshore Advantage, The Right Place, West Michigan Works, and of course, West Shore Community College. And it's the west side of the state, and I'm sure it is in other places too, but I know the west side, so that's my west side hat. But the west side of the state is really rich with organizations working in workforce development and education. And sometimes we have our head down and we're running so fast and working so hard that it is sometimes hard to see what else is going on out there and to collaborate together. So the beauty of the talent pipeline management, you heard it a couple of times, was that common language, those identifiers, the supply chain language that employers understood. And as we sat, the 5 of us in a group, we were sitting all together. It was a real defining moment. We all looked at each other and we said, we really want to go back to West Michigan and to be one voice, same language, same mission, because that's really what the employers have telling us. The employers don't care who's out there working in workforce, and we've all heard that, right? They don't care where their talent comes from. They don't care who's doing it. They just want it done. So, and so we hear that, and we wanted to work with that and honor that. So we even went so far as you see the top, that cool chain there. We created a logo for ourselves, the Talent Pipeline Management, West Michigan Talent Pipeline Management. And we're thinking that this is just the beginning. Like I said, there are many, many, many good organizations doing this work in West Michigan, and we want to see them all come on board, and we want to see us all develop that same common language. And of course, we all know that the language of workforce is very simple, right? Absolutely, everybody understands it. No, not at all. It's very confusing. And so that's the beauty of the talent pipeline management. The other thing is we wanted also to be no wrong door for employers, and there's a theme going on. If you listen to about what the Marshall Plan is doing and what Talent Pipeline is doing, no wrong door for employers. So they're coming through many, many organizations, and when we come together as a collaborative of organizations, we have seen that we have more credibility. So employers may find trust in one organization over another organization, really depending upon maybe it's the location. Maybe they work in one county versus another county, and they've worked with some organization for many, many years. But we know when we come together, we've seen it. When we come together and we start mentioning all of our names together, employers are really responding well to that. So we developed, as we came together as a group, we said, listen, that common language, we got that down, great. Let's develop a common PowerPoint that we use. And we can tweak it up a little bit and put our organizational logo in there. So we still have that local flavor and trust that's going on that employers may need. But it's common language. It's the same thing. So we start out and we show employers in our PowerPoint what their problem is, like they don't know already, but they seem to respond well to it. And then we do it, there's one slide that's different in that it's industry specific data. So it doesn't matter what sector we're talking to, we show them what's going on with the talent in West Michigan. We show them where their areas of opportunity are within the talent of West Michigan. Who are the demographics who we can reach out to and do the boots on the ground recruiting from? So we developed this PowerPoint and we started to, so I want to make sure I switch to the next slide. I get to talking, but we developed the PowerPoint. We use that common language. We also wanted to leverage the work that we were currently doing. So we have, each of the organizations, as I said, we have collaboratives, and I'm going to show those to you. So here are some collaboratives that just the 5 of us were working with. And we see the energy, the West Michigan Energy collaboration. We see the Food Processing Council, the Oh, got to go this way. Employer Collective over on the Lake Shore. And then some of the ones that are a little more developed are the West Michigan Health Careers Council, the West Michigan Tech Talent, and Discover Manufacturing, who have all got their logos done. They're meeting. They've been meeting for several years as collaboratives. But all of the collaboratives have 3 focuses, and that is to grow talent, develop talent, and recruit talent. TPM answers 2 of those 3, grow talent and develop talent. So we grow it within the K through 12, and then we develop it as adults, maybe they're incumbent workers. We want to continue to develop that talent, and TPM answers that. So there are hundreds of employers within these collaboratives, but 75 employers across those collaboratives stepped up and said, we're interested. Some of the responses to it was, when can we get started? We want to start now. And then the other one particular employer said, you know, we have been wanting this for within the Discover Manufacturing Group, we've been working on this for over 20 years. And the tools that you are bringing to us now and what we can use in relationship to the database that we've been given to use will really put information, data, hard data of what are our educators' capacity and how is it the capacity aligns with demand. And then we can do something about it once we have those hard numbers. So as I said, they're all ready to go, they're ready to start. And so that's where we are right now. Some of the work, particularly around the West Michigan Health Careers Council, has started a few years back and have had some results of the work. We've put together apprenticeships in medical assisting and sterile processing. They're working on surgical technician coming up hopefully within the next year. But that is the power of these employer collaboratives and realizing that. And if you don't have them out there, I really encourage you. You mentioned there's tools out there on how to start collaboratives. I mean, it is a process, and they don't develop overnight. But with healthcare, what we saw and we're in the 3rd year of an apprenticeship program, they've increased, Mercy Health has increased their diversity, and that was one of their requests, is they wanted the workplace to reflect the community. They've increased it from 18 to 36%. So that speaks volume. They've also saved per hire $1,900 per hire. So that is the power of a collaborative. So one of the things I also wanted to show you with the power of collaborative, I'm going to ask Joe to come back up here, test his skills. We've also developed, I'm going to switch that one more way. We've also developed some other tools, is the My Career Quest and evidence-based hiring practices. But as Joe said earlier, it's easier to show you what My Career Quest is than ever trying to explain it.
My Career Quest is a multi-industry career exploration event. So we have 4 different industries that come together to show students what it's like to have a career in one of these industries. The entire event is really about exposing students to careers they may never have heard about before. We really want to change perceptions. Together, we're construction, advanced manufacturing, health sciences and technology, and information technology.
We have great occupations within all of our industries that can be viable and just as fantastic as being a doctor or lawyer can be. It really started because Michigan Works saw that there was a need for students to see careers and career opportunities. What if we collaborate on a level far beyond anything that we've ever done before?
Career Quest intentionally is a different experience. It's designed for the students to interact with employers in a way that they can touch and see and experience the day-to-day job that they might encounter if they pursued that occupation. I think it's important for the community and the region to support our economic viability in West Michigan. These sectors are all high-growth, high-wage opportunities. This is a very influential time in students' lives, and quite frankly, the opportunities are limitless right now.
I cannot get 9,000 students into my company alone. But what I can do is collaborate with my peers and with my competitors and with my educators, and I can showcase in a way that's far beyond anything that I can do as an individual.
My Career Quest is employer driven. And so that means that we need businesses to come to the table to say, we're willing to give our time. We're willing to give our people the opportunity to work with students. We're willing to bring our equipment in, and we're willing to help fund this event. Every single dollar that's raised is out of the kindness of the businesses that come to the table. And so without them, this event wouldn't exist.
This is something that is totally different. It's not a trade show. It's not a science fair. It's a way for a student to see a career in a totally different light. And quite frankly, our employees that get to go to this experience and engage with students come away more energized and excited about their own career because they've just had a student go, wow, you get to do that every day. And they go, oh, yeah, I do get to do this every day, and it's cool.
So that's one of the examples of the power of employers coming together. There were over 100 employers involved with that. As you heard, it was employer-led. Jared was part of the first one and the second one that developed, and we lost him to Oakland, but now Oakland area is developing a My Career Quest, and we have them going on all over the state, and even in Tennessee and Indiana is now developing. So if you know, proof is in the pudding, right, of what employers can do when they pull together and how we can train talent and really make Michigan viable for our young people. I also wanted to mention the evidence-based hiring practices. That's an emerging area where we want to take away that, you know, help people overcome that unintentional bias that occurs within hiring practices. We're missing a whole group of very, very talented people because we have this unintentional bias, and that evidence-based hiring practices is there to help. So one more piece of it, of course, and then why I went, you know, when the state of Michigan had this opportunity to come and work in sector strategies, I said, I want to go because I see what employers can do at a local level. I also saw the tremendous ask from employers saying, hey, I have businesses across the state. I need help and I need help. And I know at the local level, we can't always do that. And I know that we at the state level can give resources. For an example of that was the apprenticeship coordinator. When we heard that employers were vying for apprenticeships and saying, yes, this is a way we can go, but our Michigan Works agencies were saying, hey, capacity issues. We have a lot we're doing. The state stepped up and said, we can supply the funds for you to hire a coordinator. West Michigan Works hired a coordinator, and now they have 115 apprentices, over 15 programs, and that covers 5 industry sectors. So that's just one of the ways that we at the state want to help, want to bring resources to the forefront and help our local communities to thrive and bring about talent. So that is the end of my presentation. And Sharon, you're going to come on back.
Yeah. So if you're a school, you're sitting here looking at this going, I don't know what they're talking about. This isn't my job. I just want to encourage you to look to Michigan Works, look to your Chamber of Commerce, look to your economic development entity, and ask them if they would play this role. Whether it's TPM or not, they can help bring employers together for you. They can help employers identify what the needs are and get to that list of competencies. TPM is a great step-by-step method to do it. I'm just suggesting that research has shown, the U.S. Chamber has done the legwork on this. The employer community engages well through a liaison. Doesn't mean they can't do it directly with an education organization, but they do it well through a liaison. And that liaison can advocate for them, not only with you, the education system, but advocate with them with other parts of the talent development systems. Oftentimes transportation, childcare, substance abuse, healthcare are parts of the problems that employers are facing. And those people who are working with them can address that. You, the school district, don't have to get in the middle of it. So it is something that's a best practice being recommended. It's not required. It's just a suggestion. So that's that piece. The last thing I will say is that employers should do like we did, and I can say that. Consumers Energy has done this, engage across the spectrum. You know, Jeremy was nice in saying it'll get you extra points if they say they'll do that work. I wouldn't work with them if they won't. If they're not willing to come into the classroom with a guest speaker, provide a tour on manufacturing day, step up and provide internships to your summer youth program, be a part of My Career Quest, be a part of My Bright Future, be a part of things that you're struggling to do. Expect that of the employer community. They're looking for direction on how to help and how to be engaged powerfully. And that's my recommendation to you, is that you set the bar high. I think the mistake that could happen, and we're seeing it start happening already, at least from my perspective, is when I was a grant writer in an education environment and I got to the point where they required an employer participant, I knew who to call to get the letter. I knew who to call to get the letter. And it didn't mean that they were necessarily engaged. It didn't mean that they knew what we were proposing. It meant that they'd write something on letterhead for me that said what I needed it to say. This is not that. This is a different opportunity for you. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jeremy. I can leave my contact information up there. Oh, there it is. I promise you that we will provide to Michelle Cordano the website. It's thetalentsupplychain.org is where you can go get more TPM information. That's the U.S. Chamber site. It's thetalentsupplychain.org. You got to put the in there or it doesn't work. You get someplace else. And we'll also provide the workshop schedule that Joe flashed up there. We'll send that to Michelle with the registration link for those workshops. So thank you for your time today.
I want to thank Sharon and the rest of the folks. Kind of shared some of their experiences, and we really felt that was important and wanted to share that today. So you all got a chance to see kind of what a successful model is. You've heard Roger, myself, Ed go around the state talking about success, but we wanted to have you be able to hear it from those that have done it. As Sharon has emphasized, you don't have to use TPM. This wasn't a 30-minute, an hour-long infomercial just for TPM. But we wanted to, we borrowed ideas from them on this one. They've successfully done it, and we wanted folks to see it. And I think Sharon's really done a good job too, of emphasizing there's other ways to do it. If we thought this was the only way to do it, we would have tried to require it. We didn't intentionally, because we know folks are already doing this work out there using something a little bit different, and that's okay. There's different folks you can engage. I do want to go back and emphasize one thing though, which is the need for that liaison or that collaborator. You've heard us emphasize it a lot, and I'm stealing something back in your earlier PowerPoint to emphasize that point whenever I get there, unless I overshot it. There it is. I'll use this slide. So you've heard us talk quite a bit. If you've seen the recent presentations, we've done the Venus and Mars slide. take a look at this. How many educators would have said, when talking to a business about what they do, called themselves, if they were in K-12, I'm your tier 3 supplier? I highly doubt a high school principal or superintendent would have walked in most cases, talking to businesses saying, well, I'm your tier 3 supplier. I need to make sure that the talent I'm producing meets what you're looking for. I've seen a little bit more activity on the post-secondary level, where folks are a bit more connected to the careers, where they kind of do view themselves in that supplier side. So you're starting to see that. And I do want to give a quick note to a lot of our 4 years and some of our 2 years as well, who are developing offices on industry engagement that are just doing a lot more of this work as well. So they're also great partners and potential conveners. I know we've got folks from Ferris State here. Northern's been very helpful. Grand Valley State, many other universities and community colleges around the state too. Jackson, I better quit listing things or I'll just rattle them all off. But we have a lot of wonderful partners doing this type of work that are heavily engaged from the post-secondary part into this as well, and can help provide some of those connections. So we just want to make sure that you got a chance to see what success looked like, how folks worked it. And I really wanted to emphasize that point, that this is a lot of work, and it's a lot of work on the business side. So for those of you that are post-secondary, that are education, we need them to do a lot of work. We're going to have to work with you on how we build those education and training programs. But our employers, in a lot of cases, have not been able to articulate what they've needed. They got a lot of homework to do to actually get that down, and in a hard way. And then building that common language is going to be important. So as I've said before, you don't have businesses just saying, I need a CNC machine operator, and you have to go figure out what that means. You know, have a business is saying, I need a computer science. I need some computer science gurus. Great. What is that? Is that cybersecurity? What are the specific skills? What coding languages do they need, et cetera? So there's a lot of work on that component. So please take advantage of those other resources we have out there. Reach out to your local economic development groups, chambers that are willing to do that. Michigan Works. If you are one of those organizations, please be willing to do this. But leverage those folks to help bring some of those conversations together, because that will really help going forward. And having somebody in the business lead that can actually speak business makes a big difference too. Like I said, this chart, I love it for many reasons, but one of it is it shows that Venus and Mars slide that we've always talked about in our presentations, where we don't speak the same language. And you need that translator in many cases. With that, unless the team has anything that I think we missed, we'll look for some Q&A. Are we that far ahead of schedule? Excellent. That is a great day. So we got Q&A. Dan and Michelle are walking around with microphones. We'll go to the far back first, and we can bring anybody up. So I'm just going to kind of moderate Q&A.
So my question is, do you have, I understand, I'm from manufacturing. So there's a thing called pull systems. Do you have data on what's been pulled out of your inventory of your tier 2s and your tier 3s? So, what are the things that, people get hired?
Look at that as what is the capability of the system. So you can work with the Michigan Department of Education. They can tell you what career development programs exist in what schools, CTE data. They can tell you the number of students enrolled in each program, and they can tell you, we now can tell you I can look and see how many people are enrolled in the 17th Career Cluster for Energy in the state of Michigan by working with the Michigan Department of Education. I can then track to see how many of those students went on to the community college. So watching for the leakage in the system and where there's opportunity, could we increase enrollment in a particular program? Do we need to put more effort into recruiting students for a program, or more efforts into recruiting them out of the program into our job? So there's data that you can access, yes.
Yeah, and we have some at the state level too that we can be helpful with. Part of this though is my guess, and I can tell you we learned this too going through the Marshall Plan process, there's also data that doesn't exist that we need to go find, build, figure out how to collect. So particularly if you're looking for just certifications, there's no good repository for how many folks were getting a certain advanced manufacturing certification. So those are things that we're aware of that we need to help build. We'll gladly work with you. I think a lot of our Michigan Works folks have access to LMI and some of the other stuff that they can help build that, get that data set for you. Your higher ed institutions can obviously tell you what they're doing, K-12 likewise. But we have, we talk to Michigan Works or others. We can pull in information from CEPI, which is our educational.
The state LMI office can definitely tap into the IPEDS data as well, which is the data from the community colleges and universities on enrollment in particular programs. So that's part.
Not only enrollment, but placement. So, like I met a young gentleman the other night, graduated from an EMT, a firefighter program, and he's waiting to get a job. Which is, he'll wait because that's a good job.
So part of that, in my opinion, is students need the employer to walk them over the bridge. We have to go to them and say, come follow me.
As far as the data though, no. When I said missing data, we don't have good data on placement. The best we have right now is taking a look at what universities and community colleges can tell us where their job placement stats are. But generally speaking, I don't have a good tracking mechanism in the state for where they go. That was one of the things we ID'd that we probably ought to have and be working on, but I don't have a great answer for you as to where they end up. A lot of the state programs that we run will track somebody for up to a year, maybe 2 years. But beyond that, nothing else. And then, like I said, if you're running through some of the other educational programs, I don't have a great data pool that I can share with you. Other questions? Yeah, middle. Microphone's coming.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. I know we can all hear in here, but we are still being broadcast. So it's to make sure that those on the watching on the internet can actually hear what you're saying.
My question is regarding the application in the actual funding portion, dealing with consortiums. So if you're working with a couple school districts with the business entity, how does that funding piece work? And I know it's based on the number of students. Could you just review that for us, please?
I will. And I know jokingly, I've always said that my math teacher in high school said that I would have to use algebra for grocery shopping. I said, he's full of it. Never did in my life. You might actually have to use algebra to figure this out. So I'll try and walk through it at a high level. So the school district is something I would make sure school districts definitely keep in mind. All of the funding for the Marshall Plan grants are based on the school districts you have participating. So, and it's based on the size of those school districts with a big caveat for partnerships. So they're broken down into 3 different tiers. The information's on the website. I'll kind of go over the mechanics, how this works. Tier 1's the large population. I think Tier 2 is a mid-size. Tier 3 are the smaller schools. If you have, the grants cap out at $500,000 per school district. So, and that is for that school district total. A school district can be in multiple consortia. That's fine. They can participate in 10. The problem is we can only assign no more than $500,000 to that one school district, no matter how many consortia they're in. So if one school district's going to participate in multiple consortia, I've been heavily encouraging people track your budgets because we can't approve you for more than $500,000 total out of all the Marshall Plan. Smaller districts may only be eligible for $200,000 at first, but if they partner and your grand total of students impacted would be equal to a Tier 1, then every school district can get up to $500,000. So if you have 6 school districts, and let's say that it totals up to Tier 1, that's $500,000 a pop that you can apply for max grant. So $3 million. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get $3 million, but that is the max allowed. So that's how you can do the math. That's local school districts and ISDs, they each count. So I think that covers it. Good? All right. Other questions? We had one in the back. Yeah.
So logistical question about the concept paper that's due in a couple weeks. Is there any guidance on length? I know you mentioned 1 page at the beginning of the meeting today. Is that a standard? Is that an expectation? Is it anything between 250 words and 250 pages? And the other question is, where do we send it once it's ready to go?
So there will be, when we actually have the process fully set, there's be a link actually, is the link still on the website or do we have that? No, there will be a link on the website so you can fill in the form. It'll be an online form that you can submit. You can just upload a PDF too if you want. As far as the length, I call it a 1-pager. My point being is it can be brief. We're not looking for a 250-page document here. There's guidance that is still on the website. So you can go to the website and take a look at the guidance document of what we're looking for in the concept paper. Kind of walks you through some of the different steps. Realistically, my guess is that there's going to be a couple pages a pop. One of the key things, and I'll point this out because Sharon pointed it out to me, because she doesn't like this at all, but it's in the grant application, and that's okay. We do have points awarded for employers that are identified to participate or commitment letters. Most of you aren't going to get commitment letters because you're going to end up with what Sharon was talking about. So I know, but well, they won't make it. See? However, I feel good that just getting an employer to sign a letter might get you through the concept paper stage. That is possible. I will concede that. I can guarantee you if they're not actively involved, as Sharon was talking about at the end, and really participating, you will never make it past the talent agreement stage. So don't take the concept paper points for having employer letters, like that's all you're going to need from your employers. It ain't going to work.
And Jeremy, just to add to that, I did see the actual concept summary through the MDE at a meeting yesterday. It's not live, but it's between 500 and 1,000 characters per question, maximum.
There you go. Characters?
Characters.
You can still upload a PDF if you're getting a little large.
And you can,
That's
there
what's
are
bringing it to mind.
areas where you can attach additional documents.
Yeah.
As well.
So speaking on behalf of the education institutions, it is a little difficult, and that's putting it mildly, to get curriculum changes done.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm hearing some language that says the business folks have to do their homework before they sort of actively engage the education partners in step 3 of the 6-step process. What as educators should we be looking for that basically says, okay, we're in a position now where we can take this to through our curriculum process, and it's going to be a solid project. It's not going to be like trying to hit a moving target from business and industry.
Well, that's why we have at step 3. Sharon can feel free to jump in a little bit too, but that's why we start with the businesses actually being able to clearly articulate their needs. So they can actually come to you with this is what we actually need, and then collaboratively figure out how do you address that through the curriculum. Joe, Sharon, whoever wants to jump in. And
I just wanted to mention too that part of the role of that convener is to make sure that the other partners that are involved in that process know what's going on as they're moving through. So while it's very important for employers to do their homework and to be clear about what it is they need so that it's not confusing signals to the education community, it's also important that the convener that is working with those employers is keeping tabs on, you know, what do I need to be sharing with the education community as we move through this process, because you're all part of other partnerships and groups together anyway, or I would hope that you are, and communicating with whoever that convener is to make sure that you're keeping tabs on the process.
I would also say that when it's an industry-driven credential, that's pretty easy. And that's, you know, something that our group we fought with DTE for months over we cross the wire this way and they cross it that way. That's not necessary in every single field. And a lot of the time they're going to come back quickly and they're going to say, we need this particular certification. And that's something you can move along on if you know that's where they're headed. Certification is certification and competency-based development is competency-based development. And so I think that as long as you stay hip to hip in stages 1, 2, 3, you get a sense of what you're needing to head toward if it's a certification, which I know the Marshall Plan will value certifications, and the employers are going to probably lean more toward them unless you get an industry that doesn't have a lot of it.
Hi, Edie Hatter Williams from Capital Area Michigan Works, representing the Michigan Works system here. And so what I just wanted to say I noticed we had a lot of educators and other groups, but for those of you that are not connected with your Michigan Works agency, I would highly recommend making that connection. We have our hands in a little bit of everything, from working with our educational partners to working with businesses. We all have business, whether they're business solutions folks or business resource folks or business team. So we all go out and work with employers. And so if you're maybe don't have the connection, I would certainly recommend contacting your local Michigan Works agency. And if you need help doing that, I'd be happy to help connect you. And then we all have workforce development boards, of which the majority of our members are business members. And so that would be another opportunity. We all have access and daily work with labor market information, so we can help there. And last but not least, we also have the Career and Educational Advisory Councils, also known as the CACs. And of those councils, you've literally got probably all of your partners on those councils. So between those three. So again, I'm just saying, if you don't have a connection with your Michigan Works agency, I would highly recommend doing so.
Just to add on to that, a couple things. One, the fact that the Career and Education Advisory Councils are like a pre-built consortium is not an accident. So with TIA under the umbrella of TED, we knew this was coming. We changed the whole program policy to help prepare for this. Some of those other things, LMI, they're a great connection for. Michigan Works, I'm actually going to have a few folks stand in a couple different versions. So can we have anybody who went through the TPM Academy stand? When Michelle, just raise your hand since you're already standing. So here's a few folks that already went through it, just if you have questions on it. Do we have, and then I'll just have you guys raise your hand. But again, if you're from like a association, local economic development group, or Michigan Works, can you just raise your hand one more time? I mean, these are folks that can always help connect you with others when we're doing this work. So now, do we have any additional questions? We got a couple, one already with a mic.
Hi, I'm Mike Parker from Fenton, and I have two questions. One of them would be the convener. I met with our superintendent, and we're working on trying to establish who should be the convener. Would that be from the manufacturing side or from the K-12 side? And
I would say in most cases neither, but it could be anyone. We have consortiums where the education is taking the lead. We've had consortiums where business is taking the lead. We have consortiums where you have, like in the talent pipeline management folks, where they've got a business lead, but you've got somebody that's gone through the academy that can facilitate that conversation. So I would make sure you've got, if the first thing I would see is, how's your language barrier? If it's a challenge, I would go find somebody from Michigan Works, local economic development group, somebody that can play that translator and help facilitate that conversation and bring them in. And also, if you're struggling to find other businesses you need to bring in, go grab one of them. The question, it really comes down to who's got the time to put in the work and who's willing to put in the work, because it's a lot of work to convene one of these. Joe, Sharon, anything you want to add from your experience? So who's got the time and is willing to do the work? Yeah.
Just one thing that I wanted to add is that after this meeting, I will be sending all of you an email, and I'll be sending it wide and far reaching, but I will be asking you to self-identify as a convener so that I can share that information with employers and other schools that maybe want to get involved, or nonprofits. So, you know, just early on, we're just asking people to basically self-identify as a convener if you're going to take on that role, so we can get that information to others who'd be interested.
So, well, I would also say that the convener is sometimes paid for that role. Mm-hmm. And you can put dollars in your Marshall Plan agreement to pay for a convener. So a Chamber of Commerce hires a person who does nothing but run your consortium. And the consortium can route dollars to that Chamber of Commerce, or to that Michigan Works agency, or to whoever that may be. So I think those are the thinking out of the box. Right now, I know that the employers engaged in the energy consortium, we spend about $20,000 a year covering our administrative each. So we're paying for this service once you get it going. At least we are.
Some do, some don't.
Hey, my second question would be, when we're working on this together for the different groups of skilled trades, is there a limit as to how many different skilled trades consortiums you would have within one district?
What we're advocating for in the Marshall Plan is a talent consortiums come around and put an application in along one talent need. And that's just so we can focus and we can grade it better. That doesn't have to be how the consortium necessarily works. I know TME can do things a little bit differently. That's what other folks are doing. We're also trying to make sure that we're interpreting state law correctly. That being said, it doesn't mean that same businesses or same schools can't participate in multiple consortia. So we're asking a talent consortium to put in one application under the Marshall Plan, preferably around one need, one specific identified need, as opposed to like 6 different fields. I think it gets much more complicated to score. It becomes a challenge. So that's a process issue that we have. Other question, great question, by the way.
So that's a practical question. I'm with an association that represents school districts, and I'm hearing from our members, this is like a super intense 2-3 week period of school startup. And you mentioned in the beginning something about possibly extending the timeline for some of these grant deadlines. I'm just wondering what you're thinking that means.
The first window
in the short term?
It's not much of an extension. So that's why I say I don't think we're going to have many awards in the first round. Honestly, if you're not well down the process on this or well on your way, you're probably not going to get an award in the first round. We wanted to get a couple. We know there's folks already that are well on their way. We wanted to get a couple out the door this year. One, just so folks can see what some of the successful ones look like. We're not coaching them along the way. We just know that they're out there already. I think most of folks that are looking to do this and put together a consortium and come around a talent need are going to be in the windows that we're going to have. This is a rolling grant process. So there's a window this fall, but we have 2 windows next spring. So same process, just different timelines. So we're pushing back the fall one, but it's by a matter of days, not weeks or months. Next window opens in January. I expect the vast majority of our applications and awards to come through the spring rounds, and very few in the fall, winter.
So can I submit a concept paper now, knowing that I'm not going to have my act together for the next step till later?
Of course you can. And secondarily to that, you can talk to us beforehand, before even submitting a concept paper between now and January as well.
And so the concept paper stage is really to help me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. We're probably moving that back a few days. Yes, it's a matter of days, not weeks. That's why I say that. It's a matter of days, not weeks. So maybe a week, but I don't expect it to be much further.
What type of budget detail will be required in the concept paper?
Not a lot. Just a rough idea of what you're looking, really rough idea. We're not asking for detailed budget information. That's for the talent agreement. We just want to get a rough idea. So if you want to, roughly what you're going to spend it on. Is it going to be equipment? Is it going to be professional development you think you need? Just a rough idea, and maybe even a rough number, just so we can say, oh, you want to do something with bricks and mortar. No, we can't fund that. Or I'm sure somebody's going to try and apply for something we can't fund. I don't know what else that is besides bricks and mortar, but we want to be able to look at it and let you know right away whether you can qualify for money or you can't with it, with just a real rough sketch.
There's no points associated with it.
Jeremy, Kevin Stotts with Talent 2025.
Yeah,
if I know of a district that's looking at a proposal around competency-based education, how would that sync with what you laid out in one of the first slides that had 5 or 6 different steps, which really conforms to the TPM process? But a shift to competency-based education doesn't necessarily have to be specific to employer demand, because a district should be developing those competencies in kids to move into many careers. So if it's not tied to demand, how can a district get a grant dollars to model that shift for other districts?
If it is there's a couple of things that aren't as required for the whole process. Shifting an entire district to competency-based education, innovative educator awards. Ed, Michelle, am I missing? Obviously the tuition for tomorrow isn't part of that. What else am I missing on that?
The innovation, or for the teachers.
Yeah.
$4 million for the teachers, and then there's talent and attraction promotion.
Right.
And that
so
is
there's a couple things that we're not necessarily going to score that way by saying you have to have that demand on it, because to your point, when you're trying to move a whole system and a whole school district over to competency-based, obviously we love the alignment, but it's going to be much broader than that. Other questions?
For high demand careers, if we have data in our region that has something that's beyond what is shown on that slide sheet, can we attempt to prove that, or do we need to stick strictly with the careers that were shown?
For phase 1 here that closes in 2 weeks, you got to stick with what's shown. But for the January rounds, we're working on that process. I want to talk to you afterwards about that, and because we're kind of building that process right now about how we're going to deal with those that we don't have identified yet, because we know we're missing stuff. Other questions? May actually get everybody out early, which is remarkable with this big of a crowd. All right, if there's no other, oh, one more. So close.
All right, I'll be that girl. So I think I heard you say if you're multiple districts applying, you would have one talent consortium concept paper, but you'd have multiple different budgets, 500,000 for each district, not one collective budget.
You can submit it as one collective budget. Hopefully you can we're asking schools to self-identify not much from each of those. It makes our life easier. Otherwise we have to make that decision for you, which nobody wants us to do that.
So the awards will be given directly to the districts up to 500,000, not as one collective package for the whole talent consortium?
That's how we have to award it based. The key though is that the awards can flow wherever the talent agreement sets it up. So you say you need $3 million for X and $1 million needs to go over there. Because of the source of the funds, they technically flow into the schools first with the anticipation that they would go wherever the talent agreement says that they end up.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep. Also a great question. Any other questions? If you don't have any other questions right now, but you obviously will think of some as you go and continue to work, feel free to reach out to us. Our information was on the website again, and appreciate all of those that traveled down here today. Hopefully parking is easier on the way out. And thank you all of us that joined us online.